All right, it's another episode of the Cedric Maxwell podcast. Coming to you from the road, I'm Josue Pavone. He is, of course, Cedric Maxwell. And what a Saturday night showdown we saw between the Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, we were there in person, taking it in live. Max, what's your reaction to it, man? There's so many different directions we can go with it. But I think overall, just the way this team continues to find ways to win in dramatic fashion, whichever you're into, they got something for you, right? I mean, this Celtics team, another win, another big win.
Yeah, I think what it showed me was that this team is a well-rounded team, and from top to bottom, and they're more well-rounded than Sixers. A big way the Celtics stayed in that game was their bench play. You could see what Derek White came off the bench. He had been a starter, but he comes off the bench. He gives you points. Brogdon comes in. He was successful. He showed what Al Horford can do. And all of a sudden, you remember everybody said Joe Mazzulla doesn't call timeouts. He called 2 timeouts late in the game to set up the game you play. This team is there. There are not a lot of holes in it. And you even look at Muscala didn't really play in the game, and he was pretty good. Peyton Pritchard has not played in a game, and we know that he can come in and give you spot minutes. This team doesn't seem to have a lot of weaknesses, and I think that is really so cool when you think about how well this team is performing.
It is. It really is, because if you would have asked me a month ago, I would be like, yeah, they can be a deep team if they're healthy, but we have to wait and see, because we didn't see that consistency. But before the All-Star break, that run that they went on with, of course, all the injuries that they had, they come back full, at full strength. And I love how Joe Mazzulla is getting this team prepared for the playoffs, in the sense of there are going to be some guys that aren't going to get a whole lot of playing time, but you never know, depending on matchups, you may be, stay ready for that next one. And I like how he's tying this rotation. I mean, what do you make of it? Don't look now, but we're about 20 games left in the season. This is the fourth quarter of the regular season. I think this is the part of the year where you want to sharpen these rotations to figure out what works best with your team, for your team.
Yeah, I think that's really cool when you think about that. And even you look at what Joe Mazzulla has done, and he does it by committee and what his team needs. You think of the Indiana game. Joe Mazzulla, I think Grant Williams played about 5 minutes in that game. Yeah. Grant's been a big contributor, but he wasn't needed in that game. And then he turned around in the Philadelphia game, and you had Grant. He probably did the best job that we saw against Joel Embiid. But Joel Embiid against the rest of the Celtics, it seemed like the other day. Harden wasn't bad. Maxey was not really good, and they really stood out, and they got some contributions over there from Philly with some of the other guys stepping up. But
Harris had a good.
Yeah, Harris was really good early, but late in the basketball game, he never touched the ball because it was more about Joel Embiid being the guy, and he was rolling. So how could you go with anybody else? But that's just tough to beat 1 against 5. And to see them perform like that was it was really cool to see the Celtics putting it kind of all together, and considering the fact that you would think that you looked at some of the play and you said Jason Tatum really didn't have a great game. Yeah. He scored late in the basketball game, but it was more of the other guys who were stepping up. Al Horford hitting 5 treys in the game.
3 in a row, man. Those 3 3-pointers in 2 minutes, that was the turnaround.
Yeah, right? The Celtics back in it, so that was something.
I mean, they were down by 15 points, and you can imagine how frustrated Joel Embiid was after the game when we spoke to him. And because of the way the game ended, I mean, he knew more than anyone that ball wasn't in on time. Like, it was a heck of a shot. What was it, 64-footer, I believe, was the official measurement. But man, he knew it wasn't good. It was just like he said, story of my life, which I did. I got a kick out of that, man.
Yeah.
Story of my life. What an incredible half-court shot. And it doesn't count. And overtime, game over, Celtics win, thanks to Jason Tatum's game winner.
Yeah, I mean, it was Brown who played well early. The Celtics did a real good job defensively. Even when you think about Harden didn't really kill them. They didn't have a lot of contributions. And here's the biggest thing. Doc Rivers did not believe in their bench at all. I mean, he went with his starters.
He can't even pretend, Max. He knows how deep the Celtics team is, and he's like, no, I don't trust those dudes.
The guy coming off the bench might have gotten 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that, but it wasn't one of those things where, Doc Rivers had a real belief in what his bench could do.
Yeah, it's pretty much Maxey. The most you get out of him, they put him into that 6-man role because the bench is so thin. And then now it's really McDaniels, who just came from Charlotte, right? I mean, he's a big piece of this all of a sudden, and that's not easy to implement him. But, I mean, there's other guys in here, but he's, like you said, he just doesn't trust them. I mean, what happened to Georges Niang? I mean, Niang signed that contract a couple of years ago, last summer, or I think it was 2 summers ago, and he's barely in the rotation now. He's playing he clocked in about 12, 13 minutes, but it's close to nothing when you think about his impact.
Doc doesn't have a trust factor at all when it comes to his bench and what his bench can do. And that's why he had to rush. He had to rush and hurry up to get Joel Embiid back in that game.
Yeah.
And Joel Embiid was tired that day. He was tired. He worked his ass off in that game. He was posting up. He was as strong as I've seen him going towards the basket. And he did not rely on that fall away jump shot until late in the basketball game when, in fact, I think he got tired.
You know what? He didn't anticipate Derek White to be there when he caught that ball on the inbound. He actually said that he would have attempted it sooner. Maybe it goes in on, in time if White's not there, because it forced him to sort of dribble a little bit more. And then he just tossed it as if you know what? I'm done with this game. Boom, it goes in and it doesn't even count. It's like, man, the crowd went crazy, man. That was a hell of a game.
They should have. It was a great game to see. And the Celtics have done that. They played Indiana. Indiana was a tough game for the Celtics. Then they come back and they play in this game, an even tougher game. And then without Tatum playing really well, and then Tatum connected, Brown connected. They had so many contributions with the Celtics coming at them instead of the other way around. Home teams normally have a good contribution from bench players. They did not have that at all. And Doc Rivers has to be scratching his head right now, thinking what can I do to make this team better?
He's so good at pretending that everything's gonna be all right. Like if one thing he learned about the Clippers experience is man, I can. You put me in front of a camera, and a bunch of reporters, I got this. I can bullshit the heck out of him and do it with the Denzel Washington type approach, man. He had people convinced, hey, this thing's not over, guys. But the last meeting though, because he knew these two meetings were so close together, he was really, really tough on them in that loss in Boston. Without Robert Williams, Jaylen Brown went down at halftime. They couldn't close it out. Celtics win. And he just talked about effort. Yes, defensively, the Sixers had a much better approach defending the Celtics, but there was just too many of them, man. They couldn't keep up, especially in transition. Exactly what Doc had to say after the game.
Exactly. It was essentially a beehive of guys coming at the 76ers. Every time you looked around, it was somebody else. It wasn't Derek White, it was Grant. If it wasn't that, it was Horford. If it wasn't that, it was Brown. It was Tatum. Yeah, they had a caliber of guys being aggressive and looking to take the ball towards the hole. And you think about even Brown. Here's the big thing about which people didn't even realize in that game. Brown picked up 2 fouls early in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they end up with 2 fouls.
But
he was still aggressive.
No, 3. It was 3. But you kept him in the game, though. That was, yeah.
Yeah, and Doc, he said, look, I'm rolling the dice. And because of that, I think it enabled them to play with that much more confidence. And this is a confident team right now. When you come into a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, who have you all marked up as dead, and you come back and win a game like that, what does it do to the psyche of the 76ers? The fan base, everybody around them going, you remember what Pedro Martinez said about the Yankees? You were around for that. There must be
daddy thing. Which one, man? I said a couple of things.
We ain't beat them because they must be our daddies.
Yo, that didn't sit well with the Pavones. Let me tell you, man, we didn't like that at all. But hey, I guess that was the head games he needed to play because what happened? The curse of Bambino was broken that same year.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah, he had the crowd saying that, and I guess he got the last laugh though because being down 3-0, all of a sudden then it looked so pretty for the Yankees when going into Game 7. They didn't feel good about that.
Yeah, it was something else. So I think that again, psychologically, it was a wound for the 76ers. Now, there's a lot of basketball to be played, but can the Celtics stay healthy? No second night of back-to-back. So even with this, you come in and play a Knicks team that just beat you at home, you kind of owe them. So you got to come in, you got to play with some fire, because Julius Randle is playing extremely well. And, knocking down shots, all-star. Brunson has been really good.
He should have been an all-star, man.
I thought he'd be good, but I didn't know he was going to be this good for this particular team.
Nah, you thought that he was going to slump it up after getting the bag. That's what you thought.
Got the bag, man. Got the bag.
That's what happens. Hey, it happens to a lot of people. They get that money, and all of a sudden the production drops off a bit,
Well, his hasn't. He's proven that he's worth every dollar that the Knicks paid him. And I'm sure that Dallas is probably booting themselves, saying, man, we could have kept this kid, but we just didn't want to pay him.
This episode of the Cedric Maxwell podcast is brought to you by Indeed. What's better than finding quality candidates? Finding them instantly. For a powerful hiring partner, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job. What makes Instant Match so ideal is that it isn't time consuming. You can cut through all of the chasing and trying to find that candidate, and Indeed makes it that much easier. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Indeed does the hard work for you. Sponsor a job and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resume on Indeed match your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. When Indeed knows you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Indeed knows that finding people with the right skills makes all the difference when you're hiring a team of one. Indeed knows hiring needs to be cost effective when you're running your own business. Indeed knows when you're doing everything for your company, you can't overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/Maxwell to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/Maxwell. That's Indeed.com/Maxwell. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly. And now we'll have to wait and see how things unfold with Kyrie. But look, before we continue on with these 2 character wins, I'm calling it, from the Celtics, I'm just showing everyone just how deep this team is. I got to ask you, what did you have to say to Van Gundy and Mark Jackson before Saturday's game, man? It seemed like you two would go, the 3 of you guys are just having like not even an argument, but just like a passionate discussion. And I wanted to ask you about it on the show. I waited.
Well, normally you always have the camera right in front of me, then, but I didn't see you.
I got some flicks. I got a couple of flicks, but I couldn't get the audio.
I was out. I want to say I was out Friday during the day, and I went to a shoe store called Blue Soul Shoes, and I was in there buying a pair of shoes, and in walks Mark Jackson. And Mark Jackson and I have gone back and forth. I told Mark, I said, you know what? I still believe that Marcus Smart is the best defender, under 6'5" the Celtics have ever had. He goes, no.
Oh, because he like DJ.
Dennis Johnson is the best defender. And I went back and we were going back and forth. And I said, and we finally, I said, we it's kind of parted our ways. And then I went to the drugstore. And when I walked in the drugstore, Mark Jackson had come to the drugstore. I said, you know what? I got one more thing to say. And I said, he talked about Dennis Johnson. He said Dennis Johnson was hand checking. He was hand checking people. And that made him that much better. I said, well, let me ask you this. What would happen if Marcus Smart could hand check?
Oh, man.
He went, well, I'm not pretending about what could have, because, that's not going to happen. So we just kind of laughed about it. So at the game, Marcus came
out. That conversation.
Marcus came out, and I grabbed him. I said, come here a minute. I said, we want to go to Mark Jackson. And Mark Jackson, he stepped out, and he was like, Marcus, you're my guy. You're my guy. And I said, Marcus, and I asked Marcus, I said, Marcus, we talked about you being one of the best. I said you're the best defender under 6'5" that this team has probably ever had. And that includes Dennis Johnson. He got real humble. I said, but Marcus, what could you do if, in fact, you could hand check like they did during the 80s? He said, oh, my God, I would be that much more of a beast defensively. And then that's what Van Gundy and Jackson, we all stood there, we talked for a minute and just kind of shot the shit about, what was what. And it was really interesting to talk to those two guys.
That's what's up. I didn't know that's what it was. There you go. I had no idea Marcus was involved.
Yeah, because I actually bought Marcus over because I saw Mark Jackson sitting there. I said, Marcus, come here. And he walked over and we looked over at Mark Jackson. He just bust out laughing. He gets up, he said, Marcus, you're still my guy. So,
Marcus is like, let me talk to you, man. Let me talk to you. He probably thought you were
I should have had A. Sherrod there, to talk to Marcus. And then we could have really had something going on. You know what happened last year with A.
Oh yeah, that's right. And the guard report. I gotta bring that up tomorrow. There's a lot I want to
guard report. Say I'm not that good. So that's what I was talking about while I was over there.
And that was the night that you were doing the post game interviews, right? It was am I not mistaken, right? Randy wasn't even there, right?
I think Randy was there, and he just out the blue. He just balled up the guard report. He said, look, those guys at the guard report, no, they don't know what. And then he said, what? I said, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I was like, whoa, we're on live.
Like, I know those dudes. Wait a minute.
We're on live. And he's like, yeah, they said that I couldn't defend. And he was talking about A. Sherrod. He said, I gotten a step slower. Between that year and the next year, Marcus becomes Defensive Player of the Year. And so that was pretty cool.
So you welcome Celtics fans. See, we motivated him. That's exactly what he needed.
Man, he's motivated. So I'm sure when they grabbed him, man, but Marcus is cool. Marcus has always been, really, very personable with me. Matter of fact, he got on the bus after the game and he was explaining to me, and John Wallach, who did the game with me yesterday, said, look, Mark, they made some mistakes. He said the referees came after the game and said, when I took the charge and Joel Embiid ran over me, he said, and the referee said, well, in my neighborhood, that's a charge. So Marcus said, damn, man, y'all got to call it and take the emotion out of it. So it was an emotional game, and Celtics, they were revved up. So, but you can't lose your focus coming in here playing the Knicks tomorrow night.
Right, but you also have to remember though, the referees, I feel like I like that Marcus did that, right? Because you have to remember that sometimes you have to have those conversations, but not in a vulgar way, not when you're coming at someone's neck, just have a nice conversation. And I saw that happening at least 2 or 3 times during a timeout, right? It wasn't reactionary. It wasn't like, hey, let me just talk to you about that play happened. So I like Marcus doing that. And I do think there was some iffy calls.
Well, I think the Celtics
we see the difference in free throw.
Celtics more than any team, I think, do that because Grant is constantly talking.
He's got to stop that shit, man.
He is constantly coming up to the officials after almost every play that he thinks there is a mistake. Grant will go to officials and no.
Yeah. But see, he does that though, Max. But he also does this thing where he's on the ground, and he's grabbing an arm or something, and he's like, he's got one eye. Oh, no one's looking. Oh, I gotta get back on defense. Like, referees don't like that, Grant. Don't play possum. Don't act like you're hurt. And then when the play's still going, you realize, oh, it's a 5-on-4. I'm not being a good teammate right now. Let me get in there. Oh, so what happened to you? It doesn't hurt anymore now? You can run all the way back and play defense? Like, referees don't want to see that, Max. You're not going to get the next – you're going to get the benefit of the doubt when you're behaving like that,
It's a tough cookie to go. But, I think we saw almost the best of what the Celtics can be. In these 2 games, the Celtics were able to adapt to 2 different styles. They were able to adapt to the bully nature of Joel Embiid, and then they were able to adapt to the fast break and jump shooting of Indiana Pacers. You think about it. Both
that overtime game was
Turner ended up with 40 points in that game, a loss for Indiana. What's happened? Joel Embiid gets 40 plus. Again, 41. Another loss for the opposition. So Celtics found a way to combat those guys. It's not one guy going to be. There's going to have to be a collection of guys playing well in order to beat Boston. And then you top that off and you look at Milwaukee right now, and Giannis is out. So how does that affect him? And you got to go back. How long is Giannis going to be out of the lineup?
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're the Celtics right now, you're thinking, man, we got our guys back. We're getting this momentum going. And like you said, I mean, look, these character wins, they go a long way because you know who's balling out against the Pacers, in my opinion, man? With the guy who I don't think the Celtics win that without him, Malcolm Brogdon, man. Crushing teams with that three-point shot. The best, most accurate three-point shooter in the NBA, showing you why he's that dude, and also being that guy on defense and setting the table and getting guys their shots. Now, he didn't have a great game, you know, against Philly. But like you said, then here comes Derek White, you know, setting guys up, attacking the rim, just parting the, you know, so many teams sleep on Derek White when he's driving that he just gets an open lane and he doesn't sleep on that. He will make you pay for that. And right now, he has in the last 8-10 games, he's a 20-point scorer who can dish, who can knock down 3-point shots. Like, this is a big asset for the Celtics right now.
He has trampolines from being the player of the week to somewhat like the player of the month.
Ever since that happened, Max, right?
You take him, you got him in the starting lineup, he's playing great. You take him out of the starting lineup, and he still comes in and he plays great. That's a tribute to a good basketball player, not feeling the pressure of starting, but feeling the pressure of just making plays when the plays need to be made.
Exactly. And it goes a long way for this team, man. I'm really impressed. Again, when people calling them the how deep they are, I'm like, well, we don't know that because we're not seeing the consistency. We're not seeing that. Now we're seeing it from before the All-Star break and 1 week after the All-Star break. You know, after seeing Jason Tatum, you know, get the MVP in that game.
Yeah, you didn't play. You look at Blake Griffin, who's been pretty good for you when he's had to play. Didn't even play in that game. Muscala, who had been knocking down shots as soon as he came in here, he didn't play in that game.
Since day one.
So I think the biggest thing, the Celtics have more cards to play than anybody else with the personnel that they have, if in fact they're healthy. You're not catching them on the second night of a back-to-back, so you should see Al Horford tomorrow night. Rob Williams, it's always that question mark, can he stay healthy? But so far, so good.
What did you make of his recent performance? I mean, he hit that buzzer beater going into the second quarter, which, by the way, man, like that was some of the best defense Philly has had against Boston, and they had a 2-point lead to show for at the end of that quarter, man. Like, I just think those little things along the way just really like took them out of the game mentally. But aside from that, what did you think of Robert Williams and how he's been progressing?
Rob Williams was really good. I mean, it looked like he's getting more confident in scoring the basketball himself. Like I said, we would have never seen him take that jump shot about a couple of weeks ago. But took the jump shot, made some plays around the hole, and isn't looking every time at making a play on that offensive end. He's picking the spots, and I think that's a real good thing for this team.
Right, absolutely, because you want to get comfortable with that. And I love to see him finishing around the rim, not just catching the alley-oops, which we all know that he can do so well with his athleticism, but also just making offensive plays because he has that space. And, guys like Tatum and Brown are going to find him down low, and they want to get him involved as much as possible on offense. So,
and this is what it shows about this team in the last couple of weeks is really just how balanced there can be. You mean they can be top heavy sometimes when Brown and Tatum are getting it going, but when need be, they can reach down and get some of these other guys to step in and make plays. Right. I think the Celtics had at least, I want to say they had 6 guys who scored in double figures last night.
Yes.
And when you do that, the opposition doesn't know how to stop you because there's too many holes in the dike. You got one finger here, one finger there, toe there, and then you're going, man, there's still a plug. What am I going to do? So, yeah.
it was almost as if like Doc was sitting there talking about the game, being like, he didn't say this, but he kind of got that message. Like, I just needed someone to just have a bad shooting night. And Tatum didn't have a great shooting night. It was Jalen going off. When Jalen went cold, it was Derek White. He thought Derek White was tremendous, and he thought that the turnaround doesn't happen without Al Horford making those 3 consecutive threes in that third quarter, in that second half. And they were wide open. That's what drove Doc crazy. These threes are wide open, but you can tell in the tone of his voices as to why he could tell. He knew why that Al was wide open, because the other guys were killing him, And they just
other guys are killing him.
Stop the bleeding.
Other guys are killing him. And Joel Embiid, what he does, he anchors himself around the basket. So when he anchors himself around the basket, Horford's going to be wide open. And give Horford credit. I think the first one he took, coming down on the right-hand side, and didn't have numbers, and came down and knocked that one down, and it just seemed like he got it going there. And he went from one corner to the next corner, here and there, and just kept knocking down shots, and a testament to who he is and to what Joe Mazzulla has done for this team.
Definitely. No question. He certainly earned that title, man. No doubt. The interim tag has been stripped. And he's taking force of this. He's taking control of this team. I mean, you mentioned it. People making a whole lot about him not calling timeouts in the right spots. Well, he's improved that, and he's also improved in coming up with these plays at the end of the game, setting up Jason Tatum, which reminded me a whole lot of what Brad Stevens used to do when the game was tied, and a guard named Isaiah Thomas was the one catching that half court. Man, he would start all the way full court, run all the way up, catch that. Yeah. Whether it was a 3-point shot or a layup to finish, that was one of Brad Stevens' go-to plays. And Mazzulla tipped the cap to Brad, saying like, "Yeah, I got that from Brad, man. That was the play."
Well, I mean, it takes a village right now, and they're doing an excellent job of everybody kind of playing their role. Brogdon comes in and scores. The guys don't. It doesn't hurt them enough. Tatum didn't score early in the basketball game. I thought he got a little anxious in the second half, but then he settled down and he knocked down, some huge plays. And people who are looking at it from far, they're going, "Ooh, man, them Celtics got a lot of weapons over there, a lot of weapons." Oh, yeah. And then Denver loses, and so Denver's kind of back on the heels. So Celtics again have about a 2.5 game lead or something like that in the standings.
Yeah. Yep. And the Bucks playing without Giannis. I mean, your boy Jay's in uniform. He's back, but now Giannis is out, and they're going to have to try to make do without him.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things that I'm interested in seeing what Brooklyn does now, because those pieces that they picked up from Phoenix have been, they played very well. And what they do, and Bridges has come in and knocked down shots. It's been a fun thing. It's been a fun thing kind of watching him come in, get discarded by Phoenix, and then all of a sudden ends up in Brooklyn, and he's been nothing but brilliant.
Well, they have the supporting cast, right, Max? I mean, you put a couple of all-stars in there, like a Durant or Kyrie. I mean, wait, no, that's not gonna work. A new batch of all-stars, I guess. Not them. Because that surrounding cast, man, you got a couple of top-notch defenders, especially Bridges, man. He's all defense, and you got guys who can knock down shots. You have that youth, that balance.
Yeah,
plug in a couple stars, man. A couple new stars, new faces in Brooklyn. That's all that's missing, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
All right, we'll see what happens. Celtics, Knicks at MSG. I can't wait, man. It's always fun to take in a basketball game there. And like you mentioned, man, Julius Randle. Let's see what he got, because he can always give you a good game, a good performance when he's up against the Celtics.
Yeah, sometimes he can give you a great performance, and then sometimes he's more mediocre. Celtics are looking for the mediocre one, but if it came to shove and your Knicks want to get into a shooting war, I think the Celtics will be like, okay, we got enough cannon fire, to go at you guys. So yeah,
we can do that exactly.
Mm-hmm. So.
All right, man. That's going to do it for this episode of the Cedric Maxwell Podcast. He is Cedric Maxwell. I am Josue Pavone. Subscribe, rate, review if you haven't already. You already know what that means to us. It's the Cedric Maxwell Podcast. And we keep it on. What do we keep it on, Max? I forget.
Keep it on 100. We keep it on 100.
We keep it on 100.
On 100. Not 99, not 98, 99.9. No, we keep it exactly on 100. So we're trying to tell you the truth. We are truth sayers. That's what we try to do.
Right. Man, come on. Max and Mark Jackson.
If the Celtics were playing bad, we would say they were playing bad, but right now they're playing fantastic.
Exactly. I mean, if you don't believe us, go back to our episodes last year if you want to and see what we were talking about when the Celtics were 500. But yeah, man, what other podcast are you going to get this type of insight, man? Talk about Max and Mark Jackson having their debates inside the Wells Fargo Center and outside of it as well, man. I like that. I had no idea that whole thing was about Marcus Smart. I had no idea.
Sounds good, my friend. Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much. It is an honor to myself and Joe Sway that, you guys happen to join us. You can join any podcast you want, right. But you know that one thing we're going to do, we're going to give it to you on the 100. And I think you guys appreciate, and we appreciate the fact that you let us do that.
We'll see you guys next week. Appreciate it.
All right.